Okay, I think I've made enough thumbnail faces at the camera now. Safety in Formula One. What happened to the heroes who are just willing to go out there and risk their lives? Do we not have them anymore? Hopefully you're picking up on the fact that I'm being ironic there. Kia ora. I'm Kimmy. I talk about Formula One in the world's second worst accent, and today we're going to talk a little bit about George Russell. Now, I will admit that I am not the world's biggest George fan. That's my father-in-law. George does give me a certain vibe, and I don't always like it. And yes, I know, I do tend to glaze him sometimes, but that's mostly because I think it's important to put respect on people's names, and George has been doing a damn good job this season. But now we're going to talk a little bit about his comments about safety in Formula One, and then we're going to read the comments in the article. Oh, I'm going to regret this. So today's video is entirely unscripted. This is going to go really well. Save me. So earlier on today, it's the 12th where I am. This was posted on the 11th, I believe, in Europe. Possibly, maybe it was yesterday my time. I don't know how motorsport.com actually does its timestamps and whether or not they're region specific. But sometime in the last 24 hours, let's just say sometime in the last 24 hours, Motorsport did post a article that has a number of sound bites from George Russell regarding driver safety, specifically with regards to what he is trying to push for in his role as a director of the GPDA. I do find it interesting that people keep on calling him the director of the GPDA. He is a director of the GPDA. He's not the head of it. That is Alex Wurz. And he obviously also has a cohort in Carlos Sainz now, but previously he was essentially doing it on his own because obviously Sebastian Vettel was retired for a couple of years and it was just George, even though technically Seb was still one of the directors. Anyway, that's kind of beside the point. So just a few comments that George made this week about safety, and I am going to read this out in full because I think it's really important to contextualize how these guys feel about safety and specifically what they think about and what they remember from their own careers and how that influences their thought process, how it influences their opinions. Speaking to motorsport.com, Russell has explained why his role at the GPDA to advance safety is so close to his heart and how several horrific accidents have crystallised his desire to leave motorsport in a better place than he found it. I'm not chasing to leave any legacy. That's never been the intention. It's just that if I see an opportunity to improve something, I want to speak about it, especially if it comes to track safety or car safety, Russell explained. In 2012, I was teammates with Billy Munger, who lost his legs in a British F4 crash in 2017, and had a close relationship with him. Seeing that crash live and then watching Antoine Hubert's crash at Spa 2019 in F2, I was watching that live. It was sickening to watch. When you experience things like this with people you know so well and you believe you have ideas that can help improve the safety or prevent that from happening, then you naturally want to share it. Again, Romain Grosjean's crash in Bahrain 2020, I saw that. He was in front of me and I passed him and I still see the image in my head now. I looked in my mirror and all I could see was flames. It took over my whole mirror. That could have happened to anyone. It could have happened to the greatest driver in the world. It's just the danger we face. So I think that's probably why I wanted to be more involved than not. And let's not also forget that it did happen to the greatest driver in the world, the man that everyone always holds up as being probably the best Grand Prix driver ever in existence, lost his life in a way that affected safety regulations. The reason why the plank wear rule exists is because of Senna's crash at Imola in 1994. Safety is an ever-evolving thing, and just because we used to do things some way doesn't mean we should continue to do them that same way, right? So I 100% understand where George is coming from here, and I totally agree with him. Not that my opinion really matters, because at the end of the day, these are the guys that are out there who are putting their lives on the line. We should listen to them if they think that something can be improved. It doesn't have to, inherently motorsport is unsafe. Right? It is an unsafe sport. Most sports are unsafe. Certainly, most contact sports are unsafe. God. But motorsport is an inherently unsafe sport. So doing any way, making any changes to mitigate the risk in a way that makes sense, I don't understand what the problem is. But we're going to get to that in a minute because people do have problems with it. So there are a few more comments that Russell made, and I will link the article down below, but I'm just going to conclude with what George said about the FIA and specifically about Rui Marquez, who is the current race director. We don't want to go to fight against the FIA. We don't want to fight against F1. You want to work together with them to get the most for them as a sport, the most for them as a regulatory body, and then the most for us as drivers. You want to rise together and fall together. How do you achieve that? That's another thing. It's been very refreshing having Rui Marquez on board as race director. I feel he and FIA sporting director Tim Malin have been exceptionally receptive. They listen and they react, and I think collectively we're all substantially happier now with where we are. Now, I think that last comment is really important because obviously there was a lot of criticism about and around the race in Spa and why it was delayed as long as it was and whether or not they should have gone racing. I agree with what decision they made. A lot of the drivers agree with what decision they made. However, there's been this kind of knee-jerk reaction. I did mention this in my previous video, in my last video, that choosing not to go racing in Spa was the death of wet weather racing in Formula One. Can you be any more hyperbolic? Oh my God. Come on. Come on now. That is just so dumb. Oh God. And that's going to lead me on to the comments, because the comments on this article are a ride. Okay. Now, I normally don't read the comments, but sometimes they just make for really good content. I will put them up on the screen. I am not going to put usernames in. Now, this is a very specific choice for me not to put usernames in because, like, I know I've said shit on the internet like 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, that I would like to disown, okay? I'm not going to put people's usernames in my video to exist on the internet forever or until I take the video down or private it or whatever, or, you know, it's still going to exist because somebody might download it. I don't know. I am not going to put the usernames in because I think people should be able to delete their comments when they realise they've done a stupid, okay? But I have screenshotted them. I do know who the usernames are. And I am going to put the comments up on the screen here for posterity. The very top comment, name redacted, voicing your opinion, if well-founded, is absolutely fine. The thing with George Russell just is that he's a backstabber, a rat. People see right through his shallow PR personality. But he's doing a pretty good job on track, and that's what matters. So you think somebody's a backstabber, and then you go on the internet and comment anonymously and be a dick? You do understand the irony, right? Where is the Regina George meme when I need it? Yeah, personal attacks, always fun. As I said, I'm not George's biggest fan, but I will go into bat for him on this one because that's a thing to say. And it has absolutely no relevance whatsoever to the conversation in the article. You just wanted to be an asshole. That's it. Like, you just wanted to be one of these. That's it. That's all you wanted. Congratulations. You did it. Well done. Here's another one. The next one down. What people find sickening is George Russell's bleached, PR-friendly, overly politically correct personality that he invented for himself since he moved to Mercedes. The amount of media scrutiny that these guys are under nowadays. Since Drive to Survive, since social media opened up, now that Bernie's not in fucking charge anymore and they're allowed to have Twitter accounts and TikToks and whatever, the amount of media scrutiny that these guys are under is intense. Every single person on that grid has a PR personality. People will try and say that Oscar Piastri doesn't have a PR personality. Trust me, Oscar Piastri, everything you see about him is a very carefully cultivated PR personality. They have to present themselves in a certain way so that they can not be constantly dogpiled on by people on social media. And they're still being constantly dogpiled on if they let that PR personality break for just a brief moment, or because they have a PR personality and people think that's too obvious. Shut the up. God damn. I'm going to skim past a lot of this next one because it talks a lot about Grosjean's accident and it's a really long comment. But then if you go further down, I also dislike his crusade against racing in the rain. That part is unforgivable to me. Unforgivable! Making up extreme lies about dangers and risks in a weird attempt to make the outdoors sport F1 an indoor sport. God! There is just too much hyperbole coming out of his mouth that's problematic when he's I love that word, problematic. I exist in fandom spaces. I have to hear that word all the fucking time. Kill me. Put it on the shelf. It's problematic when he's a representative for the GPDA, as it then makes it so much easier for their counterpart to shoot down or ignore any complaints. It's his job! It's his job to advocate for safety! You absolute fucking nugget. I love this next one. This one, like, this is a reply to the previous comment. Racing in the rain is a complicated subject, but it's certainly something the GPDA should be having some input into. There is definitely a visibility issue. I don't know that the spray is worse nowadays, but I think that the sport is increasingly offered up as family entertainment rather than a battle of gladiators risking their lives. I fucking hate that narrative so much. I hate it. They're people. They're not 2,000 years ago in the fucking Roman Empire. Just because you're thinking about the goddamn Roman Empire every 0.2 seconds doesn't mean the rest of us are, okay? They're just fucking people who are really good at driving. They're not gladiators. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm going to talk also a little bit in a minute about the water situation. Back in the day, it was, this is still the same comment by the way, back in the day it was just assumed you could watch someone die on live TV. You certainly did in 1994 if you watched some broadcasts. Yes, I saw that. I did not see it live, but I saw it on television. Both of them. I was only 8 years old and I didn't really understand what I was watching, but it was on the news and I remember watching that weekend. But F1 is very much now just aimed as a family entertainment for all ages, especially in the USA, and so justifying a crash that was foreseeable, such as Hadjar's at Silverstone, becomes harder, especially if that had been at a higher speed part of the track. So the GPDA might be all for racing in the rain, whether the race and TV directors are is another matter. Next comment. At some point, the risk has to be taken. You may as well not race, and F1 has already reached the point with wet racing. The Hadjar crash was a nothing incident, and I could give 100 examples of a more dangerous crash in the dry. Look, there are still wet races. There are just situations where some conditions are more dangerous than others, and it is important that a race control consider each individual circumstance and not just blanket go, yeah, these conditions are fine. Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes you've got the bottom of En Rouge, where there is a literal fucking river running across it. Sometimes you have the Kemmel Strait, where the water pools, and there are trees, and there is not very much wind that is blowing away the spray that is coming up, so it falls straight down on the track and it does not disappear. These are the specifics of certain situations. Wet weather racing is not dead. Calm your tits. It's fine. Just sometimes the race needs to be stopped or delayed. Yes, I agree. Probably could have been a little bit sooner in Spa. That's my opinion. But ultimately, I think it was the right decision not to let them out on track, because at the end of the day, we actually got a lot of laps of actual racing rather than going around behind the safety car because they realised, oh, we can't see anything. We didn't get a timed out race because they then had to red flag it. Yeah, it was boring, but it happens. Some races be boring. This is Formula One, not Demolition Derby. But just talking about the specifics of why the spray is so bad now. And it is very specifically a generational thing with these cars, because guess what? The spray does not come from the tyres. It comes from the floor. That's right. This is why when it's wet in the current generation of car, as in 2022 and after, there is worse visibility issues because the Venturi tunnels basically create this lovely funnel. It just sucks the water up off the friggin' track and it blows it straight out the back, and that's it. It is not coming off the tyres, it's coming from the floor. It is the downforce of the car in the current generation of regulation cycle. And that might be a little bit better come 26 in the new regs because the downforce is going to be reduced, but it will still be a problem because downforce is still a significant component of the car design, and a lot of that will still be coming from the floor. So the tyre covers that were tested and all of that shit and different tyres and I don't know, like it's the floor. It's coming from the floor. That's why it's worse. The other thing that you've got to consider is when there's this amount of spray, okay, how are you going to see yellow flag? If you can't see the car in front of you, if you can't see the lights of the car in front of you, then there's no way in hell you're going to see a yellow flag at all. So you're going to be relying on your race engineer communication, which if they don't catch it in time, if it doesn't come up on their screens in time, you might be well into that yellow flag zone and already passing an incident before you actually realise that there's a yellow flag there. I don't know. That sounds kind of dangerous. Just a thought. They already have enough issues sometimes with being able to tell whether or not a panel is blue or yellow in certain lights and like rely on the actual wave flags. So doing that in terrible visibility conditions where you actually can't see the car in front of you or their lights obviously is gonna be a problem. Oh my God, this is a take. Visibility is only a danger if there are drivers in the field with a sinister mind to crash people out of races. Oh my God. If you're going to argue against rain races just on the argument that it is wet, then we should shut that. Nobody is saying that there shouldn't be racing in the wet. Literally, nobody said that. Oh my God. Actually, somebody here makes a really good point as well about the marshals, which they follow up in a previous comment, because this is a whole debate going on in a comment thread here. As I said, I would still have them racing as long as the circuit maintained its homologation, i.e. the marshal's visibility was not compromised. If the marshals cannot see the next marshal post, then the circuit is by definition unsafe. That is correct. Name I am not going to mention. And then somebody asked if they were an AI bot. I ain't kidding you, I am very seriously owning you. Now we're going to get into the sensible comments, and like, I apologize, there's going to be a lot of bleeped out swear words in this video, I think. As you can tell, this is an unscripted video. Subscribe to my channel and like it if you enjoy my videos. It helps me with the algorithm and makes sure other people see my takes. Also, if you like to support creators on Patreon, then my Patreon is down in the description as well as right here on screen. Thank you very much to my patrons for continuing to support me. You guys are awesome. And now I'm going to read a comment that actually makes some sense. I am old, so I can recall how hard Jackie Stewart pushed for safety. I'm glad that George Russell feels this way. His safety agenda is much better than Seb Vettel and his social agenda. Okay, that. Or Lewis Hamilton and his social BS. That. The first part of the you got me in the first part, and then you lost me. I have witnessed drivers being crippled or killed in various types of racing the past 67 years. Blah, 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 blah. Watching Romain Grosjean walk out of the fire was one of the greatest sights I could imagine at the time. I'm grateful to every person who has helped racing safety over the decades. And then somebody goes, George is a two-faced backstabber. Oh God, who cares? Who cares what he is like? He is doing the right thing. I literally do not give a shit about George Russell's true personality. Who cares whether or not you like him? There's certain things that I don't particularly like about Lewis Hamilton. I still support him as a racing driver, even though there's certain people that he associates with that I'm a little bit iffy on. I appreciate the fact that he goes out there with his social BS and wears a fucking rainbow helmet. Absolute bare minimum support you can do as an ally, really, except he does it in countries where it's illegal to be queer. That's a ballsy fucking move. I appreciate that. I am illegal in some countries, even though I'm married to a bloke, also into girls. Don't really care what parts you have. To be completely honest, I think gender is a big, wrought, fake thing that just exists to put us all in boxes, and we should all just forget it even exists. And I'll probably have to cut this out of this video because I know that's a controversial fucking opinion. Also, don't be a Harry Potter adult in this day and age. Just don't do it. Just don't. Just don't watch that fucking show. Don't watch it when it comes out. Don't buy the games, don't buy the books, just don't. Completely off-topic conversation there. In case you guys hadn't figured it out already, like 2 years ago when I started this channel, I certainly have some left-wing opinions. A lot of them. Yeah, not really any right-wing ones. So you might want to kind of unsubscribe from my channel and not even watch a video again if that's going to piss you off. That's a you problem. Skill issue, okay? I get this joke and it's funny. I don't agree with it, but it's funny. George is one of those things that Mrs. Slocum used to call her cat. If you know, you know. That's a really shitty thing to say, but it's funny. It's good to see that he's campaigning for safety now rather than campaigning for drivers to be allowed to swear on TV. It wasn't about the swearing. It was never about the swearing. I have a video about that. It's not about the fucking swearing. There's absolutely no point in banning swearing. It would be very unfair to many Oceanians. Yeah, it would. He wants to ensure safety by making sure racing becomes a polite affair of letting people pass without fighting. No, he is identifying situations where it's dangerous and then having a conversation with other drivers so that they can work with the FIA to figure out whether or not there is an alternative solution or a way that they can mitigate the risk. And I'm sorry if that's too difficult for you tiny-brained fuckwits to understand. I worked in corporate businesses for too long and I sent far too many strongly worded emails. I can't believe that I am like literally just going into bat for George Russell here, but I am. You better hang up your helmet and just not race then, boy George. Can you imagine if he was, say, teleported back to the early days of F1, spouting off this stuff to the likes of Fangio, Clark, etc.? I can only imagine their reactions. Guess what? It's 2025. That is not 1950. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that a shock to you? Oh, I'm sorry for not delivering it more kindly and gently and in a way that won't hurt your feelings. Moist-eyed toe boy. Just admit that you like his eyelashes. He's got beautiful eyelashes, George. Russell doesn't know the slightest about sickening F1 crashes. He should have a chat with the likes of Jackie Stewart about the subject. Good! That's a fucking good thing that he hasn't seen the crashes that we used to see. Well, not that I used to see, because obviously I wasn't born until the 80s, but that used to happen back in the 50s, 60s and 70s. The fact that those crashes don't happen anymore is because of people like Jackie Stewart, and that's a fucking good thing. And this is always the case, right? It's always, we had it worse back in the olden days. Fuck you. Like, shut the fuck up. Oh. This is why I usually don't read comments. I mean, you know, look, I'll be honest. It does really frustrate me and it does make me mad, but I'm not as angry as I seem. I'm just a really good actor. Yeah, it's one of my many talents. Rage on tap. More safety? Why? And then it goes on to accuse George of only ever putting things on the agenda if they think that they serve him personally. I mean, sure, like probably there might be an element to that, but I don't get that vibe. Like pretty much everything that he brings up, I'm like, yeah, legit. That's something that needs to be discussed. Is it a problem? I don't know. Have a conversation about it. That's what we're doing. We're having a conversation about it. We're not setting anything in stone all the time. Just having a little chat. Let's talk to the other drivers. Hey, do you guys feel like this is a problem? Yeah. 18 out of 20 of us agree. Cool, let's take that to the FIA. That's what meetings are for. Oh, and here we go. This is a great one. I'm sure a Kiwi said this. Headline, whinging Pommy whinges some more. Right. Thank you for that incredible contribution to the conversation. So that's the comments from the Autosport article. It goes on in Reddit. Like a lot of people talking about how like they still hold a grudge against George because of the Bottas incident. Like it was not good, but people criticizing George because they don't like his PR personality. And then when he does show some emotion, like he did with his incident with Bottas, like at Imola, what do you want from him? Do you want him to show his personality or do you want him to be a robot? Where's the balance? As I said, like I don't necessarily like all of the drivers that I root for. Like I don't know these people. Most of you don't know these people. Most of you have never met them. If you have met them, you've probably seen them in a very short glimpse, in a snapshot in time. Like I don't know them. You don't know them. To have these kind of extreme, like layered opinions on what you think somebody's personality is like behind what they present on camera and to the world on their Instagram account, on their TikTok, on their whatever, is just really fucking weird. And I know that this is a parasocial thing that's been going on for friggin' God knows how long as celebrities have been a thing, right? You know, like I remember reading gossip magazines in the friggin' 90s, you know, whatever. It's been going on for decades at this point, ever since celebrities like became something that was able to really exist in the manner that they do now. Parasocial relationships have always been a thing. And I have always thought that that's fucking weird. And those parasocial relationships don't just extend to people who like get real intense about being a fan of a person. They also exist when being a hater of a person, when expressing negative opinions about somebody. There's so many people out there, and this is also something that I've talked about at length in previous videos, that just basically want to go on the internet and spread dislike and hatred about certain people who they don't fucking know. And quite often these things that are said out there in the wilds of Reddit or on like, you know, comment sections of legitimate news articles, they end up spreading further. They end up becoming part of the canon, as it will, because they've been repeated and said so many times it becomes this giant game of telephone where people read something and they just arbitrarily believe that somebody on the internet is telling the truth. Most people on the internet aren't telling the fucking truth. They're just spitting their opinion. including me. Okay, this is just my opinion. Don't take it as gospel. Don't repeat what I'm saying to others as the cold hard truth unless you do your own research. I feel really bad for George. I feel really bad for George and how he is spoken about on the internet, just like I do about a number of various different drivers. And the wags. I would also like to say the way that some people talk about the wags, I know this has always been a thing, but like, yeah, I get that the increased presence of drivers' partners on broadcasts is a little bit tiresome. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't completely hate it when I see Alex or Rebecca or, you know, a lot of them, because I'm bisexual and they're very attractive. But it is tiresome when the camera pans to them and we get this kind of long shot on Lando's girlfriend while there's cars going around at full speed around a circuit. Like, why are we doing that? I agree, that's really annoying, but that does not mean that we should be going to personal attacks on these people and like making up these horrible rumors about them, or like even like my favorite, digging around on their social media going back like 10 years or whatever. I'm sure most of you, if you look back 10 years ago at what you were saying on social media or even what you were saying in real life, you wouldn't necessarily agree with what you said back then, what your opinions were. People grow, people change. Man, like, I used to be a pretty horrible misogynist back when I was like 19, 20. Now I'm a raging angry feminist. People change, okay? This person gets it. So somebody asked, I genuinely don't understand what is so outrageous about what he said. The comments below the article and across social media are all negative. Am I missing something? And the response is, unfortunately, people on social media just have a hate boner for George Russell. They don't like that he's British and that he sounds and looks posh, which is nothing related to F1, but people just get stuck in these preconceived ideas that they can never shake. Then somebody comes out and says Russell also DQ'd himself while checking on Joe for his horrific crash. Good go, Russell. You know what? That, like, to me, some people like to say that that was him posturing. I think he just wanted to check on somebody who got trapped between the barriers. You absolute fucking maniacs. And then I think we really get to the crux of the matter with why a lot of people truly despise George Russell. People who are champions of toxic masculinity hate George already, but when he dares talk about safety, a very unmanly, girly, or even gay concept, edit, sarcastic, needless to say, hopefully my tone conveyed that, their insecure personalities can only respond by hurling insults. And you know what? I think a lot of what George gets and a lot of the hate that George gets probably does have something to do with this. I am making an assumption. However, as somebody who is a woman who creates motorsport content on the internet, I can tell you that there's a lot of misogynists and homophobes out there. Yeah. I don't generally delete comments as a rule because at the end of the day, they help my engagement rate and help me out in the algorithm. But every now and then something comes along and I'm just like, I cannot in good conscience let people actually read that because it will actually rot their brain. I remember one of the very first comments that I got, and I think I did delete this one of the very first comments that I got on my very first YouTube video was asking me to do a video in a bikini. Because people just think that it's okay to go on the internet and ask random women to do videos in bikinis. And if there's people out there asking that on YouTube comments of some random fucking person on the internet, generally people like that think that femininity in any kind of way is a weakness, right? And George Russell does come across as quite feminine sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make him an inherently worse racing car driver. It doesn't make him an inherently worse man or person. He's just a fucking person. And you know what? There's a lot of women out there who actually think that slightly effeminate men are sexier anyway. So take from that what you will. I'm still mad about that time a few years ago when the FIA had a tractor on the track in the middle of a safety car, prompting Gasly to be incredibly mad. Yeah, doing exactly what caused another driver to pass away in the past. I'm tired of the FIA, and then somebody made sure to point out that it was in fucking Japan. Yeah, that sure was a choice. During wet conditions, poor visibility, tractor on track. Oh, I wonder why that might not go down very well with the drivers. But I'm sure there's somebody out there who thinks that that's completely, totally fine because all of these guys are gladiators, manly, manly men. Somebody bust out the 2.5 Men theme song. No, don't do that. I'll get copyright struck. I don't see any comments on here. I'm sure that if I scroll down far enough, I will. But there are a number of people who really criticised George a lot about the 2024 crash in Australia, where the back end of his car got upset after Alonso moved ahead of him, and just this position where he lost control of the car. Basically, that was the one where he ended up sideways with his floor facing oncoming traffic, and the fact that he sounded panicked on the radio. Number of people criticised him for that, saying he was being hyperbolic. That's literally the most likely way that you will die in a modern F1 car. The most dangerous possible position to be in a modern F1 car is with your floor facing oncoming traffic. It is the one part of your car that is vulnerable. And the fact that that drain cover went through the fucking floor of Carlos Sainz's car in Las Vegas back in 23, which was only a few months before Australia 24, I would like to remind everyone, should be a reminder of how fucking dangerous having your floor exposed like that is. And people still like to complain and criticise George because he sounded too panicked on the radio. F you, honestly. F you. So I'm going to stop there. Because let's be honest, reading comments is exhausting. I am going to put a link to the motorsport.com article down in the description. Hopefully you haven't used up all of your free articles for the month. Thankfully I hadn't. One of these days I might actually pay for a subscription instead of just turning on reader mode on my phone and hoping for the best. But yeah, I will link the article down below. I'm not going to link the Reddit thread. If you really want to go and find it, you can. But like, we all know that Reddit's a cesspit of misery. Thank you for watching my rant today. Thank you for watching one of my few unscripted videos. I have no idea if you're going to be able to understand a word that I've said this time, because honestly, when I don't script, I talk really fast. I'm sorry about that. A reminder, make sure you subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my videos. Like this video if you want to see more of my stuff on your homepage. And if you do enjoy supporting creators on Patreon, the link is down in the description as well as here on screen. I am working on a few spreadsheets that will be exclusive to paid patrons, and I do have an editable one on there if you want a championship tracker. So you can literally go in there and plug in numbers and positions and like theoretical ideas of where people might finish or where they might have finished, and it will calculate the numbers for you. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. That's me. I'm done for the day. I'm exhausted. Have a fucking great week. Hopefully I might be collaborating with somebody this week. We'll see how it goes.